So, hi guys, myself and Gav are back for another BattleBox and Beyond for Relics.
Yeah.
Right, Gav, this is the one that you like. This is your faction, the Orcnar,
Orcnar.
the big, bashy, melee brutes.
Yes.
Shall we call them?
Yeah, they're subtle isn't a word that you'd use to describe the Orcnar.
Well, again, there's another old saying we used to have. Basically, my friends used to make the joke when I was flirting with a girl, I was as subtle as a flying brick.
Yeah.
So I think that would suit these guys.
Absolutely. Subtle as a flying Orcnar.
Flying Orcnar. This sounds like a new unit.
Indeed.
I just have the image of one of your big guys with one of the little ones just going, right.
Off he goes. Yeah, the Orcnar are, funny enough, the faction I prefer to play. I don't know if it's because I have an affinity with them, because a lot of them are quite sort of just bizarre or whatever, but I just find they're simplistic. Simplistic's probably the wrong word, but you know, the straightforward of your tactics. There's not as much synergy in those as there are in the other factions.
So the units are more standalone.
Yes, yeah, you can send out a unit to do a job and it can pretty much do it by itself.
Yeah,
you know, as long as you send the right unit.
Well, for what we have in the starter box, then we have the two puppies.
Yeah, we have the two Dockers, which are a unit. Those are pretty good fighters.
They're pretty good fighters. I think it's 4 base.
Yes.
+1 on the charge.
Yeah.
And then depending on what your opponent's armor stat is or defense stat,
might drop down by 1, but
yeah. So they're pretty handy.
But the key point to those is that they're fast.
And they run outside command.
They run outside command, and they're not bothered about command. They've got a skill called Outrider, but they've also got a skill called Sure-Footed, and we didn't use that when we had the demo game.
Yeah.
But if in Relics you've got difficult terrain which slows you down, not for Sure-Footed, they just go straight through it. They don't care.
Yeah, so they just bomb on. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So they are the classic unit that you would send out on your flanking sort of actions to go around.
Yeah. So basically, you would have a couple of them out on the flank, circling around to hopefully maybe nip in and get a commander.
Yeah. And because they're fast, they tend to have a good psychological effect on people.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, there's nothing worse than standing opposite side of a table and just going, wait, that just came that far toward me in that turn.
Yes.
Okay, those have to die now.
Yeah, totally. Which is really good, because you can also use them as your distraction unit as well, whilst your unman or your intern's getting into place.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have the unman.
Yep.
That's your basic line guys, your basic punchy.
The unmen are the basic troops of the Orcnar. They're reasonable movement, reasonable good attack.
Yeah.
A little bit of defence, so you know they modify when you're being attacked by them.
Yeah.
But the boost for them is that when you roll your melee rolls, you get to re-roll one of the dice from it. So
yeah, and when you're looking for doubles, and I think they get, on average, I saw them having 3.
They get 3 dice on standard, so 4 on the charge.
Yeah.
So being able to re-roll one of those dice is great, especially if you do a gang up attack as well with the unit of them. You know.
Yeah. You see, I don't know, with them having the 3 dice. See, this is what we were saying about trying to figure out doubles versus dice pool.
Yes.
You know, with them having 3, I think you can easily roll your 3 and re-roll your extra one, because that essentially gives you a 4 dice pool, which is sort of that happy medium where you want to be.
It's not quite the same odds, because you're still only trying to match less dice, because you're re-rolling once you're trying to match the 2 that are there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's essentially you're better off than just rolling 3 dice.
Yeah. Then the last one you have is your leader, which is a cheap leader.
Yeah, Neowan, he's only 8 points.
Yeah, so very cheap and cheerful.
It's very cheap, very cheerful, absolutely useless in combat. He's got combat.
Oh, well, hang on. When we were playing our demo game, I ran 2 of them in.
Yeah.
And did they not kill somebody?
Yes, they did.
By pure fluke.
Pure fluke, because I saw your dice rolling before that.
Yeah. My dice rolling as always is on par. Yeah.
So they've got a combat stat of 1. And the combat stat is the number of dice you roll.
Yeah.
For doubles, instantly you're at a disadvantage because you've only got 1 dice.
Yeah.
But in Relics, you still roll 2 dice, but you ignore double 1s and double 2s.
Yeah.
So the chance of getting a double's even worse than a 1 in 6.
Yeah, because then you're actually taking out chances.
Yeah, so you may have got a double 1, but it doesn't count.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer.
But it's given it that nice balance.
Yes. Their main point of being in the game is that you have other commanders in the Orcnar force. Command range for Orcnar is quite limited. It's quite short.
Yeah, short, tiny little bubble.
Yeah. But the Neowan act as like a command repeater.
Right.
So if they're in the command of another commander, a non-Neowan commander, say like the Bjorn, then their command range is doubled. So it's effectively like they're repeating, so they're like a transmitter sort of thing.
Yeah, so basically you can have your bubble for your Bjorn.
Yeah.
So what's it? What's this?
8 for the Bjorn.
So you have your 8-inch bubble, but from that, with the other guys, you can have another 8-inch bubble popping out the side of that and swinging around inside it.
That's correct. Yeah, the Neowan's command is 4 normally, 4 inches. But if they're inside the command of like the Bjorn or something, then their command is double, so it becomes 8. So if you get them just inside, you've got the 8 from the Bjorn, and then that's
another 8. So you've got a big command of 16.
Yeah, so it's like a chain. Yeah, but it doesn't increase the Bjorns because it's 2 bubbles.
So
it's not a big 16, it's sort of 2 8s next to each other. So 8 16
so
one direction.
If you had a Bjorn and 2 of them, so imagine 8-inch bubble, 8-inch bubble, 8-inch bubble, and just working around each other.
Yeah, and you can do that because they're nice 8 points apiece. So, you know, that's...
Yeah, like I said, cheap, cheerful, and handy.
Yeah.
Right, so what would we add to this?
For this, you've got a couple of choices, or a few choices. The first choice, or what I'd probably consider as the first must-buy for the Orcnar, is an Eaton.
An Eaton, that's your big dude.
40mm solid metal.
40mm base dude with gigantic club-like arms.
Yeah, I mean, they come in around 40 points.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
So if you were going from your rough 100 to 200, you could grab 2 of those and maybe buff another unit?
Quite easily put 2 of those in and then maybe chuck in another unman to increase the unman.
Yeah, to give them that extra little punch.
Yeah. Or stick 2 Eatons in and take another Neowan, something like that. That gives you a nice big punching power. If you want to go a little more tactical, then you could take the Anguild. And the Anguild will be of a funny profile. Get to the page so you can see them.
So what do we have? What do we have? What do we have? Show me the shinies.
That's the Anguild model there.
Right, so this guy looks as if he has gigantic spikes coming out of his back, really gribbly, drooling face, a catching mitt, and a big clog club. No, that looks like a catching mitt.
It does look like a catching mitt, you're right.
Why do I have the feeling this is going to show up in your fantasy football team as him being a catcher?
He probably won't be in the fantasy football team.
No?
Because the Anguild are actually outcasts. When new Orcnar were born, they're hatched from hatching sacks on the back of one type of Orcnar only. So the reason that they're all mutating in that is because their genetic pool is screwed. They're not getting a proper mixing.
Yeah, well, I remember you telling me the fluff before. Whenever the big spell went off, they started to mutate and stuff.
Yeah, they used to be 6 foot tall, blue-eyed, blonde-haired. Used to care about nature and all that sort of malarkey.
Yeah.
The spell went off, started mutating them. They become very tribal, very...
Yeah, very, very much. Just we are now devolving into the savage past.
And even though they're all quite ugly and mutated, there's a certain subspecies called the Anguild that when they're born, they're too mutated. They're just too much for them, so they're outcast. And essentially like the Greeks used to do, where they would sort of, a baby was born.
Yeah, the old 300.
When
the child was born,
he
was checked for the deformities.
So they throw them out. Those that survive grow up to be Anguild, and they kind of clump together and they loiter around the edge of the village. And when there's a battle, they come and help, although the Orcnar don't want them to. So they have something called outcast, loners.
Loners, right.
And loners means that if you friendly units that don't have loner activate within 5 inches of those, they suffer. They have to do a morale check.
Right.
With a -1 modifier because they don't want to be near them because they're scared that they'll catch something from them.
Right.
Okay.
So they're it's what was the old thing? They're essentially the lepers of their.
That's
their
exactly it.
faction. They're the outcasts, and I mean I remember back in the old days, lepers were the outcasts because people were scared of catching it.
Yeah,
so the same sort of idea.
Get rid of them. Yep, totally. Yeah. It's exactly the great way of describing it. In actual fact, there are times when an Orcnar tribe will go out if there's the Anguilds that are hovering around the village gets too big, they'll go out and kill them because they don't want them to. Yeah, get too close.
They'll go on a purge of these purr creatures which have been cast out.
So you're kind of wondering, why would I want to have them in my army if I don't want them near my troops? Well, they have another ability called Special Deployment, which allows you to deploy them anywhere on the table during the deployment phase.
Right. So I assume this is because they're not part of the actual main body of an army.
Yeah.
They're already there.
Yeah, they just turn up and do their own
they'll
thing.
have ran ahead of the army to either keep out of the army's way or to actually try and do something to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can deploy them anywhere on the table as long as they're not within 10 inches of an enemy unit. So outside your deployment, outside the enemy's deployment, are not within 10. So they're actually a really good unit to use as a really early strike.
Yeah, the alpha strike.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got combat 3. They're not that great. They've got 0 defense and 1 damage, so they're quite easy to take out.
Are they units of 1?
Units of 2 to 4.
2 to 4. Right.
Yeah.
So they could gang attack.
Absolutely. Yeah, you could take 4 of them. They're 12 points each.
That's not bad.
Yeah. So for 48 points, you could have 4 of them. You can set them in special deployment, use them to ambush something really early on, and really scupper your enemy's plans up. But another key point to them is because they're so genetically screwed, they have a special affinity with the Mage. The Mage in Relics is magic. That's what's known as the magic. The Orcnar don't have magic. That was lost during the attack that the Mage had done.
Yeah, so basically their connection to whatever magical source there is within the world was just
lost. I mean, they're more connected with the Earth, so they have a lot of stuff. Rules on their profiles that kind of sound like a magic spell, but they're not because you don't need magic to cast them.
It's more of an elemental affinity.
Yeah, so like earth rumbles and stuff like that, so you can create that sort of effect. These guys are actually kind of almost anti-magic, and they have something called suppress.
Right.
And with suppress, when you cast a spell, some spells have got a drain value, and the drain value is the number of power dice you have to discard before you even attempt to cast it.
Right.
Okay. Suppress actually increases the drain value of spells by 1.
Right.
For any caster that's trying to cast a spell within 6 inches, maintain a spell that's on a unit that's within 6.
That's actually a really interesting mechanic, because not only are you having to spend dice, but you're having to roll dice after the fact. And are those dice that you've rolled spent, or?
Yes, so you've got a magic pool. So say you've got your magic pool 7 dice. So you've got 7 dice to try and cast your spells that turn.
Yeah.
If you want to cast a spell, you can take as many dice as you want and roll them. Once you roll them, whether the spell's cast or not, those dice are then put aside and they're no longer available that turn. And then what's remaining is your remaining dice pool.
Yeah, and then if it has a drain cost before that, I'm assuming that's paid.
Yep.
I will load in, say I think 3 dice will do it for this.
Yes.
Roll those 3, so it's actually cost me 5.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a way for us to put some real powerful spells in.
But you're going to have to. You're taking the risk on them.
Absolutely, yeah. So and things with suppress make it even harder. So the factions that are real magic based, generally don't like things with suppress.
Yeah. So like we already talked about with the Britannians.
Yeah.
Having say they're a big nuke one.
Yes.
Having that suppress on it. Or one question. For those suppressed, is it unit based or is it per miniature? Because if it's a suppress per miniature, and you have a full unit of 4, that could become really expensive really quick. The
special rules on units are actually for the unit. So
okay, so it's
any caster within 6 inches of the unit.
Right.
So you could actually string your models out like that, and it would be 6 inches, so it would be sort of 12 inches that way, but then you've got a big area that way that you're covering.
Yeah. Yeah, so depending on the way you actually space your miniatures and stuff, you can cover a nice big area of ground.
The shape of the actual bubble.
Yeah, and then it's any spellcaster within that, so it can affect multiple ones.
Yes, yeah. Any time that the spellcaster doesn't have to be in the area. It's either the spellcaster or I believe it's if you're actually casting a spell and you're in the area, or you're casting a spell on a unit that's in the area.
Right.
And it also affects upkeep as well. We spoke earlier, I think it was in the previous one, about upkeep.
Yeah, the Britannian video.
Yeah, from one turn to the other.
Yeah.
When you do that, you discard 1 power plus the drain. This increases that by 1 as well, so it makes it more expensive to keep spells going.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're quite a good alpha strike unit and quite a good sort of suppressing unit for magic-based armies.
Yeah, so if it's 48 points for 4, that's half of our 100-point alliance. Let's say we have 100 points. So what would you do with the other 52?
I would do either the Eaton, slap him in.
That's 40. So that leaves 12 points left.
Yeah, so you could then bump up the Unman by a couple.
By 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how much are the, I keep getting the name wrong on them, but the doggies?
The Dockers.
Yeah, Dockers. How much are they
Dockers
per guy?
are 23 points.
23 points per guy. Unit size?
Your unit's 2 to 3, so you could actually chuck another Docker in and make them
even
more of a
if you didn't go for the big unit of the Outcast guys.
Yeah.
I think up on your Dockers, very good idea, because they are quick, they are light, they are fast, and they hit like a ton of bricks.
Hit like a Docker.
They hit like what they are.
Yes.
I can see what you're saying with the other guys, but I think early game, how many people are going to be grabbing magic that early?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you're Vatia, then you'll have magic, whether you like it or not. If you're Nuim, then you've got magic in the starter sets.
Okay.
So, you know, there is magic in the game from the beginning for two other factions.
Okay. Well, like I said, we've only looked at 2 of them so far, so still learning.
Come to them.
Right, well, so...
It all depends, but I mean, basically it all depends on what your opponent plays and how they play.
True, true. Right, well, what else would you suggest if you were going, say, something different? Say we dropped the big dude, what would you grab instead?
Okay, well, you've got the option of this guy here called the Spatka.
Alright.
And he's like a really slightly smaller, fatter version of the Dockers.
Alright.
He's got a ranged attack. As you can see, he's actually been sick.
Yeah.
It's
I'll assume some form of acidic bile.
Absolutely, no surprise there. Before battles, they stuff him full of food, and really get his stomach acid going.
Yeah.
And then they push him onto the battlefield, and he sort of lumbers around, just spitting acid, puking up acid all over the enemy.
This sounds like a bad night out in the towel. No, because you've went out, you've had your great night, you've had a kebab, on the walk home, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, he's got a 12-inch range, attack 4.
Okay, that's not bad.
Yep.
Because when you consider the longest range I've seen so far is the 15.
Yep.
For your gunners, for your Britannians. Everybody else seems to be hovering around the 8 to 10-inch mark.
Yep.
So these guys are a nice mid-range. They seem to be.
Yeah, nice sort of 12 inches is nice because you're kind of at 12 inches you're just on the rim of being in charge range, but might not.
Yeah, you just
and it really adds to the whole activation sequence stress. You know, because you want to get in, puke on them, and then hope to get the initiative to activate to get out of
or to get something blocking again, or to get another shot on them so that when they do charge, they're not as effective.
Absolutely, yeah, totally. They've got 12-inch range, 4 dice to attack with.
Not bad.
So that's we recommend 4 dice is a good number to be rolling. So obviously that would be modified by defense.
Yeah, they've got combat too, so they're not incredibly bad.
No, they can't charge into combat though because they're so fat.
Oh right, I assume that's a special rule.
That's lumbering. Yeah, special rule. Then they've got another special rule called Spit, which is part of the so after making a ranged attack, even if no hits were caused, roll a d6 for the target unit and any other unit within 4 inches of a visible member of the target unit. A unit will receive a pain counter on a 4 or more. In Relics, we have these things called lingering effects.
Right.
And they are sort of things like fire, pain, horror, acid,
exhaustion,
poison. Exhaustion's a lingering effect.
Yeah.
And what they do is they have they then have an effect on the unit when the unit activates. When the unit activates, you roll to see if you can get rid of them. I think it's just a 2+ to remove them. Although there's a spell that makes it harder to remove. And if you don't remove them, then they kick in and have an effect.
Right.
And these guys do the pain counter. I should just quickly read what that is.
I'll assume pain is some form of paralysis.
It basically makes it harder for you to do things.
Yeah.
You can see, you're like, when you're in pain, you're doubled over or whatever.
It's just, what do you mean I have to walk on now?
So when you've got pain, the unit's defense is reduced by 1.
Right.
So if you've got a defense of 1, it becomes 0.
So losing that dice on the charge becomes negated.
Yes. So it's great to be sick on someone, give them a pain counter.
Yeah, and then send something big onto them.
Yeah, then charge in with something else and you don't lose your charge bonus because of their defense.
Yep.
And additional to that, the unit's combat and range stats are reduced by 1 as well.
Right.
So you can really dull down an enemy unit.
Yeah, so basically if there's something big and nasty in front of you, you want to soften it up a little bit.
Hit him with them. Get sort of acid saliva all over him.
Right, one question. Say I have 2 units of those.
Yep.
I hit the same unit twice. Does it only take 1 pain token, or does it get a second?
You take 2 pain tokens, but the effect is only applied once.
Right, but you have to roll twice to get rid of it?
Yes. So what you do is you roll twice. If you pass 1 and fail 1, you take 1 off. The other one remains, and so it's still being affected by it.
Yeah, okay.
So you can load them up with...
Yeah, so you can load them up with a continuous effect to make it really hard to get it off.
Yes.
Or take it off the unit, but it'll never do more than what it's meant to do.
Well, yeah, however... the issue with that is that pain counters have to come from a unique rule each time. So if you were to have 2 of these and they spat at the same unit, the unit would only take 1 pain counter. But if you had one of these and something else that had a different rule that placed a pain counter, then you'd place 2 on them. Right. So yeah, you can't sort of load out with all of these and put loads of pain counters on one unit. You have to use different rules to...
I see, what I was thinking was if I had a unit of those, a unit of those, a unit of those.
Yeah.
So then it's 3 separate units that are doing it to them.
No, it's because the actual rule that's placing the counter isn't unique.
Got it.
So you'd have to have spit, and then you'd have to have something else that like.
Yeah, right. So if it's the same rule, it doesn't stack.
Yes.
That's simple. That's clean. That clears up any rules arguments for the future.
If it's different rules, then the counters stack, but the effects don't.
Got it. Right. Well, so I think we've hit our 200. We've had a look at some very cool units. I think it's time to have a look at the new aim. So, guys, we'll move on here, and we'll see you next time.